All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. So, it's about to be 2025, and it's going to be the new year according to Esau. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't the biblical new year because the biblical new year starts in March. Right? March, I believe, close to April. But as you can see, everyone thinks this is the new year for January, and they get resolutions, a new year, new me. So, Slovakia. However, the thing we're mostly focused on is bettering ourselves with our relationship with the Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, and just making sure we don't stay ignorant of the enemy. Because as we know, even though the new year isn't next year, the way that Esau plans his traditions does have to do with how he keeps the new year and stuff. So, for instance, like C19. That C19 was released in November C19 Slovakia was picking up in November and became widespread in December all the way to 2020, right? And this could be the same case too. We hear a lot about coldings and things happening, and I believe a plandemic exercise recently done on December 27th, leading into 2025, the new year according to Esau. So let's watch this video real quick and get some scriptures.
Friday, December 27th, and I have a couple of updates for H5N1. And if you don't have time to watch the whole video, the short summary is, I think we are in big, big trouble. And no, I'm not kidding. Sequencing came back from the Louisiana case, as well as from the birds in their backyard flock that they were exposed to and I think was the transmission source. And here's what they found. This case showed mutations that could help it attach to human respiratory tract. Because remember, birds and humans do not have the same respiratory tract. So the kinds of cells that H5N1, which is a bird flu, want to stick to are not similar to human respiratory, which is likely why it hasn't been transmitting well human to human yet. Also why most of the human cases who've gotten it directly from animals have also had conjunctivitis, because the receptors that are most similar to birds in humans are our eye cells. But the mutations seen in the Louisiana case and in the British Columbia case would favor human respiratory tract infection, which is the primary way that most flus transmit in humans, which would provide it a bigger advantage to human transmission. What's more alarming about that is that those same changes were not found in the birds that they sampled from that patient's farm, who had died of H5N1, meaning that those changes were likely generated in the human host, not in the birds. And that's the problem with the rather laissez-faire attitude we seem to be having towards transmission on all of these farms with cows and birds. The idea that, well, it's only direct from those animals that people are getting infected means it's not a big deal. But that's why it's a big deal, because human hosts make that opportunity to change. And we're now at 70 known human cases from animals. And at least 2 of those cases have shown the ability to mutate to favor human transmission. And I've said from the beginning, all it's going to take is the right human host to get this, for it to mutate and it to become human to human. And we're literally seeing that now. And yeah, the patient in Louisiana is older and has pre-existing conditions, but they're hospitalized in the ICU. And the kid in British Columbia was not a young child, not elderly, and did not have pre-existing conditions, and yet spent a month in the ICU. That we know of. They've stopped releasing details. So just because more of the cases coming directly from cows are less severe doesn't make them not severe. And the one coming directly from birds is still trying to make their jump. And if that one is the one that gets human to human transmission, we are fucked. Full stop. It's going to make COVID look like a delightful walk in the park, because that version has a 53% fatality rate. The one coming from cows is a 1 to 2% fatality rate. So far, mostly infecting people who are less clinically vulnerable. But we do not know what its fatality rate would be when it hits children and the elderly and the clinically vulnerable, because most people working on farms are younger and healthier. It's also really not good to see it infecting so many different species simultaneously, giving it even more opportunities to recombine. This past week, it infected and killed 20 big cats at the Washington Animal Sanctuary. Cats across a variety of species, I may add. And personally, I'm deeply
I want to
when
read
it
this
hits
real quick.
children and the elderly and the clinically vulnerable, because most people working on farms are younger and healthier. It's also really not
Now
good.
let's read this. So as this post says, I'm gonna be kind of constructing these words so that this video doesn't get taken down by YouTube. So I'm gonna call it bee flu, okay? It's worth reiterating that H5N1 has never behaved like this. Millions of infections in North America combined with what seem to be multiple modes of transmission, combined with growing numbers of human infections, combined with the flu season, is a time bomb.
See it infecting so many different species simultaneously, giving it even more opportunities to recombine. This past week, it infected and killed 20 big cats at the Washington Animal Sanctuary. Cats across a variety of species, I may add. And personally, I'm deeply concerned with what I'm seeing in San Francisco, because it's now the third city in the United States during this current outbreak that has exceeded the 50 necessary for sustained transmission. H5 specifically is 228. Now that would be worrisome alone, but it is made more worrisome because it represents all of the circulating flu A in the wastewater. Also, 220, and is moving in the opposite direction of H1 and H3, which are the other two kinds of flu A that might be in circulation. So all of the flu A in circulation in San Francisco is likely H5. Now, best case scenario is one of two options. Either it's everyone dumping out their milk post-holiday, though if that causes that big of a spike in H5 in the wastewater, that does not say good things about our milk supply. Or we had a series of smoggy days with a lot of smoke coming from the Central Valley at the beginning of December, which hits that wastewater area more than the western side of the city. So it might be dust particles washing off in our recent rain from every surface that they touched. That's the best case. Worst case is this is now humans, because the only reason we tested it in Louisiana and in Mississippi was because the flu surveillance system caught it. Same with the patient in Delaware. That's a lagging indicator. But if it's starting to circulate human to human and they're not either sick enough to go to the hospital to get a flu test, or they don't have insurance, or their sample isn't picked as a part of the random assessment, we may be missing cases. That's the worst case scenario. Maybe it's intermittently infecting humans, but it's not transmitting well human to human yet. But the metaphor I use is that's like embers sparking on dry tinder. You have a bonfire, little sparks are going off. But if you're surrounded by dry tinder, eventually one of those sparks is going to start a wildfire. And that wildfire might burn the whole forest down. If each of these represents embers that are catching, it will only be a matter of time before the right ember catches, and we have a forest fire, and the whole place burns down. So none of this news is comforting to me. All of this screams bright red lights of we are heading into the danger zone. I try not to panic, but this is not good.
Right, so if that doesn't confirm that there's not going to be a plandemic next year, then I'm not sure what else can confirm that there's going to be a plandemic next year. Now, let's get out of scripture. Now, first dealing with the new year, Mark chapter 7, verse 8. You have disregarded the commandment of God to keep the tradition of man. Right. So we know that January 1st and the new year is a tradition of men, a tradition of Esau, and it goes back to the time of Rome. Right? And we're not supposed to do anything with the tradition of men. So we're not supposed to be selling birthdays, we're not supposed to be selling holidays like Christmas, and we're not supposed to buy into this lie that the new year starts in winter. The new year starts when everything comes to light, which is spring. Now, let's deal with the H5N1, right? And we're going to get a couple scriptures. You know what I mean? Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. Right? Famines, it's like it. Pestilences and famines. So you got to understand, if you remember in C19, we didn't just get the pestilence. We also had people's pockets being run up. So what do I mean by that? Things in stores got more expensive, right? There are only certain places you were allowed access to, right? And that time, prices have went up abundantly. So now a lot of people can't afford what they used to be able to put out on the table, right? So famine and pestilence has been kind of going together whenever we get a pandemic. So when it comes to this H5N1, guess what? Yes, there's gonna be a pestilence, which is H5N1, and probably other infections and diseases and pestilences that can come along with it. H5N1 may not be the only pestilence. It could be other pestilences along with it. Right? We gotta understand that E is ready to turn this stuff up to achieve his new world order agenda. Right? And you also gotta understand famine. So as you can see, during this pestilence of H5N1, they've tried to kill a whole bunch of chicken. They tried to kill a whole bunch of cow. They've been recalling things throughout the whole entire year, from milk, from basic snacks, right? And this pestilence is not only gonna have things shut down, it's also gonna run up your pockets more to a point that people won't be able to afford anything, right? So, and in the meantime, the digital side of the consequence of this pestilence and famine, of whatever comes in 2025, the digital side will also come to its fruition, just like how digital side got really big in C19. The digital structure, I guess you could say, will probably fully mapped 2025, and according to the Lord's will, maybe a little later, I'm not sure. But yeah, so if there's anything you gotta say though, it's this. Let's get out the scripture. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. It's like it. Let's get Corinthians 2:11. It says we're here. We got the AI version. But it says we're here. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices, right? So in this meantime, brethren, a lot of people may start getting sick. I'm not gonna lie. I think a couple of days ago, even I was coming down with a cold, and everyone I knew was coming down with some sickness. So, brethren, I advise you to, and me too, start making sure your immune system is high. Start taking care of your immune system. Right? Get vitamin D. There's these vitamin D3. There's these vitamin D3 that doesn't have pork in them, and you could just search it up on Amazon, or go to an organic store, and it has bovine gel, which means the gelatin came from cow and not from pig. Get your vitamin C. Exercise. Exercise, seriously, that's important. And above all, prayer. Because Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai is really the one that's going to get us through this. So I hope this lesson was very edifying. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, and Shalom.